Today, the feds take Google to court. Plus, the money race heats up with just 2 weeks left before Election Day. And finally, Microsoft wants Elon Musk to take its cloud business into space. I'm MacKenzie Sigalos, and this is CNBC After Hours. Stocks rose across the board on Tuesday. Want to guess why? Well, if you've been paying attention to After Hours, then you would know that it's all about fiscal stimulus yet again. On Tuesday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that both sides had made progress in negotiations for the next big coronavirus relief package, and then stocks rose in tandem. But that's not the only thing that Wall Street is paying attention to. Netflix just reported earnings after the bell. Here's what we know. The most watched metric for Netflix earnings isn't profits or revenue, it's actually subscribers. And those numbers came up short on Tuesday. Wall Street analysts forecast that the company would gain about 3.57 million subscribers. But on Tuesday, Netflix said that it gained only about 2.2 million. So why the huge miss? Well, it's a couple things. There's been an influx of competitors into the streaming space lately, and there are still big delays in production because of the coronavirus pandemic. Netflix also tightened up subscription practices in recent months, like proactively booting inactive customers. Another thing on investors' minds, the feds announced a long-awaited antitrust lawsuit against Google today. Here's what we know about that. The Department of Justice alleges that the tech company has illegally maintained a monopoly in the internet search business by cutting off rivals from key distribution channels. 11 Republican state attorneys general have already joined the DOJ as plaintiffs. The legal action marked the most significant antitrust lawsuit since the government sued Microsoft in the mid-90s. And that leads us to a Google-focused edition of our Soundcheck segment, where we round up the day's biggest action and share with you what the top newsmakers and business leaders had to say on CNBC's airwaves.
Unlike Microsoft, here, the problem from the very beginning has been the lack of consumer harm. So Google's products are well liked by consumers. They're free, unlike the Microsoft case, where the whole objective of Microsoft was to enable itself to continue charging high monopoly prices for Windows. So they're very different cases.
I think the Europeans have not done a great job in coming up with remedies that really help anybody or do anything meaningful. They don't want to, you don't want to break the product. The Justice Department's suit is trying to open up some of the channels where someone could compete with Google in search. That's their big idea.
This is going to be a long process, and this is a process that will involve years, not quarters, likely, in actually getting resolution. Number two, as part of that multi-quarter, potentially year process of politicking and negotiation, it's not really clear what types of changes Alphabet or Google will have to make to their core product and how we think about the real financial impact of those changes.
The Microsoft case, it was a decade long. The stock went up 900%. So for investors, it's more of a sideshow. It's important. We're taking it serious, but we don't believe it's going to have an impact on the stock. If you look at the stock today, it's up 2.5%.
We are 2 weeks out from the 2020 presidential election, and we're seeing serious money being poured into the campaign in this final stretch. The Biden camp and, Democrats in general are raking in record-shattering amounts of cash, easily outraising Republicans in the most recent quarter. A lot of that has to do with small dollar donors, aka people like some of you who may choose to make smaller cash donations to individual candidates. Of the record-breaking $383 million that Biden raised in September, more than $200 million came from them. So those smaller dollar donors are clearly really important to campaigns. But we're also paying a lot of attention to the big money donors, who are seen as a key bellwether of what's likely to happen at the polls on November 3rd. And as of now, it looks like both K Street and Wall Street are falling in line behind Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. CNBC's Brian Schwartz reports on money and politics for CNBC.com, and he can break down all the big spending ahead of Election Day.
Well, with about 2 weeks left to go until Election Day, Joe Biden and Democrats are really crushing Republicans and President Trump in the fundraising game. There's no other way to put it. Joe Biden raised about $383 million in September versus Donald Trump's campaign, which raised about $240 million, give or take. And essentially, Biden's going into this final stretch with a ton of resources, much more than Trump. And you could see that across the board in Senate races as well. At the end of the day, this is just going to be a battle on the TV and digital airwaves. And the Democrats might have an upper hand simply because they have more cash on hand going into the final stretch of the election. I think if you really sat down with somebody close to the Biden campaign, I don't think they'd tell you that they were going to do this well. There were a lot of doubts with him early on, particularly when he was taking on Bernie Sanders and Senator Elizabeth Warren, who were doing really well with grassroots, more progressive donors. But since he became the nominee, he's been exceeding those expectations big time. The main part of his fundraising haul came off of online donors, often small dollar donors that gave something around $200 million to him in September. But the other piece of it in the third quarter, which encompasses the last 3 months, came in part off of donors from Wall Street, folks that gave massive six-figure checks to Biden's joint fundraising committees. So you see that reflection of, the Wall Street executives kind of hedging their bets on Biden and looking to see that Biden may actually come out the winner come November. So there's K Street and there's Wall Street. K Street's for where the lobbyists come from. And, it's fascinating to see the dynamic between Joe Biden's campaign and the world of lobbying, right? You look back and, Biden's campaign said they weren't going to take any money from lobbyists, which they've stayed with. They have not taken any money from lobbyists. But that doesn't mean they can't engage with them. And that is really an important difference. These lobbyists have gone to the Biden team and with questions about what policies could develop in a Biden administration, particularly, if there's a blue wave and Democrats come into Congress and sweep into the Senate, or if the Congress is split. The questions alone illuminate how the lobbying industry is kind of pivoting itself toward Biden possibly defeating Donald Trump. And I think that's key for any business that are looking to get a foothold in Washington, potentially under a Joe Biden presidency.
Okay, time for today's numbers round. First up is 24. Apple has launched a 24-hour music video streaming channel dubbed Apple Music TV. The new streaming channel is free, and Apple plans to premiere new music videos every Friday at noon Eastern. The announcement drew comparisons to MTV in the 1980s, when the channel actually premiered new music videos. Right now, Apple Music TV is only available in the US in the Apple Music and Apple TV apps. Next, 800. Microsoft plans to bring its cloud computing business to space with the help of Elon Musk. SpaceX has already launched more than 800 of its Starlink satellites into orbit. The idea is to create a super fast internet connection through these satellites, accessible by anywhere on the planet. Now, Microsoft wants to connect its Azure cloud computing data centers to the Starlink network. But to do that, it's going to need thousands more of these SpaceX satellites to cover the globe. This comes a few weeks after Microsoft announced a new service called Azure Orbital, setting up even more competition with Amazon's cloud business and Jeff Bezos' ambitions in space. Amazon is working on a competitor to Starlink called Kuiper, and Bezos, of course, has his own rocket company. And finally, 2. President Donald Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden returned to the debate stage on Thursday. But after the last chaotic exchange between the two presidential contenders, which featured frequent interruptions, the debate commission has adopted some new rules. One of the biggest changes? A mute button. Trump and Biden will get 2 minutes of uninterrupted airtime to answer questions at the start of every 15-minute segment during the next and final presidential debate. The mic of the candidate who isn't speaking will be muted for those 2 minutes. After each candidate delivers their uninterrupted remarks, the conversation will then proceed to an open debate format, where both mics will be open the entire time. Both campaigns have agreed to the rule changes, but it remains to be seen how this will actually play out. You're definitely going to want to watch this Thursday, and you can do that here on CNBC.com and on our YouTube channels. That's it for After Hours, but before we go, here's one more thing to keep an eye on. General Motors unveils the GMC Hummer EV pickup truck tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's right, the storied Hummer truck is going electric. The Detroit automaker teased the new vehicle a few weeks ago, but this is its first official reveal. Now, not only is this a big deal because GM revived the Hummer brand, it's also a big deal because it signifies that General Motors is bringing the fight directly to Tesla. The new Hummer should go on sale in roughly a year, most likely before Tesla's controversial Cybertruck. Get the latest on that story in real time by going to CNBC.com and downloading the CNBC app. Now, for the rest of October, we'll be right here in our home office every Tuesday and Thursday with a new edition of After Hours, so be sure to catch us later this week.